Women Making Moves, where we celebrate the moves that women are making. My name is Amy Pons. I'm a Master Certified Life Coach and an energy healer. I'm joined today with Jennifer Wonyoung Lee. Jennifer Wonyoung Lee, she, her, serves as the first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Specialist at the Office of the Illinois Attorney General, where she plays a pivotal role in shaping and advancing the office's DEI initiatives. Prior to this role, she was a litigation paralegal at the same office and actively participated in cases involving civil rights and constitutional law. She also served as the inaugural Jill DuPont Fellow for Judicial Excellence at the Chicago Appleseed Center for Fair Courts, where she focused on systemic reform initiatives to improve outcomes for self-represented litigants and created the Court Observation and Education Program. Jennifer holds a BA in political science from Indiana University, Bloomington, where she was a member of the Pi Sigma Alpha National Political Science Honors Society. She also earned a paralegal certificate from Duke University, graduating with top grades. Her professional affiliations include the statewide Racial Equity Collective at Forefront, Illinois, the Board of Governors for the Chicago Council of Lawyers, and the advisory board for the Wilbur Wright College Paralegal Program. She is also a soprano with the Chicago Bar Association Chorus. Jennifer has shared her expertise and career insights with students at UC Berkeley and various city colleges in Chicago. Additionally, she has experience as a translator and interpreter for an international organization and is proficient in English, Korean, and some Mandarin. Jennifer's current research explores the underrepresentation of Asian American attorneys in a government, and she's writing a paper on the topic for the Institute for Inclusion in the Legal Professions 2025 review. In her free time, Jennifer enjoys cooking, collecting ceramics, interior decorating, gardening, and singing classical music with her chorus. Jennifer, welcome.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
I don't read bios before we go live intentionally because I like to have an organic response. And then,
Yeah,
of course, I get tripped up on all the words. So,
no worries. I'm gonna trip up on some words too. I just I was hoping that would be okay, and you've made me feel more comfortable just, being natural, being you. So thank you.
thank you. Amazing. So, when I was thinking about in my 30s, I was thinking about my civil rights soul warrior was awakening. And I'm like, do I go back to school and get my JD? Do I want to be a lawyer? So was it always that vibe for you? Or not suggesting we had the same vibe and your soul warrior was awakening like mine. But what was it for you?
That made me want to go into the legal field.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I actually entered the profession in 2013. I started out as an intern at like a small private law firm in my college town. And, that was my real first exposure to the law. But, as much as I enjoyed that internship, it really wasn't until my next internship at the public defender's office that I realized that I really, really liked what I was doing. And I really liked what the profession was about. It was really there that I came to discover this concept of restorative and holistic justice. Because, I think in our society, prosecutors tend to be kind of the heroes, or they used to be anyway. I think things have shifted a little bit. And, prosecutors do incredible work. They also do a lot of reform and justice-centered work. But when I interned at the public defender's office, I realized that, wow, people accused of crime are humans too. And it really shaped my understanding of the justice system, made the justice system incredibly attractive to me. And I've been in it pretty much ever since. I've been doing public interest in the law for a long time.
Wow. And I want to go back to the term you used. I haven't heard it before. You said reformative and what justice?
Restorative and holistic
Oh,
justice, the understanding that everyone involved is human.
oh my gosh. I'd love for a moment to connect what I feel as my personal philosophy and in my work, what I feel happening at this tipping point fever pitch of humanity right now. We all have energies inside of us. And again, I'm an energy coach, so it's my modality. Everyone has a divine feminine and a divine masculine energy within them. High level divine feminine creation, high level divine masculine action. And when they beautifully balance together, it's magic. It's like the soul and the human experience coming together, and it's awesome. And I feel for thousands of years, the divine feminine has been suppressed or cast out back to 1692 when we thought women were witches and a couple men too. And we've reached a point where I feel we've only been focused on the masculine of action, order, structure, power, etc. And it's actually forgetting about that part where it's trust, flow, creation. And what you beautifully just said, I feel especially we're at this point where we're bringing the feminine back to create the balance we've never seen in this lifetime, no matter what field you're in. Do you feel resonance with that? We both do very different things, but
No, I absolutely do. I was actually going to say I identify with that on a personal level because being in the legal profession and being in very male dominated spheres, because I was super into philosophy, specifically Western philosophy in college. I was in political science and, these are very male dominated spheres, right? I felt like I had to be more masculine. And that journey ended up being quite beautiful because I did end up sort of discovering the parts of me that didn't necessarily fit into a box, right? I got to discover masculine energy inside me and, got to embody that for a bit and grow with that for a little bit and sort of mature as a complex human being. But in my 30s and in my late 20s, I started to transition a little bit, I have to say. And I realized that I wanted to integrate some of that femininity that I used to embody so much and so fully before, just wanted to come and let it sort of fill me, right? And change me and, turn me into even more of a complex human being. So, what you are talking about, I feel like I've been on that journey on a personal level. I totally see it. I think I know what you're talking about in terms of like the macro level, right? The systemic level. I
right.
love that.
Systemic. Yes, absolutely. And that's where, to your point, beautifully in my 30s as well, my soul started stirring. I was kind of crushing it at corporate life, but nothing was fulfilling. It really wasn't fulfilling me, but also it was further paired with the systems. And I'll talk about how I feel about the systems in the workplace. We're still operating on the systems that were created 100 years ago, rooted in patriarchy, white supremacy, colonialism, capitalism. And I didn't subscribe to that. And I started to get more and more uncomfortable. Then again, kind of, I don't know, paired with, tripled with workplace abuse of my own in the corporate world. And so I'm like, okay, it was like my spirit team and the universe was like, Amy, hi, what you want to do? Because I was so beholden to the certainty, which isn't all that certain a lot of the times. And then beautifully, there was like a one last straw moment that led the way to realize I'm actually here on this plane at this space and time to usher in the divine feminine. And everyone that I serve through my coaching is realizing their divine feminine, whether male, female, humans, they're recognizing divine feminine and still being asked to operate only in the masculine. And it's like, oh, holy shnikes, how do I do this? So I got to a point where I said, today's my last day, and I help other people recognize what they're needing to awaken, but also not have to implode everything that might feel safe in their 3D world, like I did. So it's a beautiful space and time to be in. And I love to hear that you said that you've been experiencing it yourself on the personal level, because when we again have that balance and everyone gets it.
Yeah. I just feel more whole. I do.
The lengths at which we go to as humanity to harm each other won't even exist, and we won't find any resonance with it. Like I know that there's going to be a day where there won't even be war because we've
Sure.
balanced. So anyway, I digress. So holistic and reformative justice, that's so gorgeous. I've never heard that before. And that lands for me because I am on the forefront of fighting for workplace psychological safety. And my first priority is getting the abused out safely. When you've experienced any abuse, any type of abuse in anywhere, you're taking a lot of different hits from every different angle, physical, mental, emotional, psychological.
Absolutely.
In the workplace, a lot of times, because there aren't that many options,
Yeah.
you then take a further financial hit to just get out and feel safe. That was me specifically. And even meeting with lawyers, they're like, you have a case, but you don't have a case. We don't
Mhm.
have that law that says psychological abuse in the workplace is illegal. So that's what we're marching toward.
It's beautiful.
And I also have space for the abusers. Again, like we just said, and I'd love to hear your take on, I don't know what you want to call, do you call them criminals? I don't know. I want to be respectful of the terms, but
Yeah.
I have space for abusers to say, I show up like this because I've never felt safe myself. Now, even getting to that point, because they're of a certain hard wiring, I don't know, they might never feel that in this lifetime. So they'll
Yeah.
have to come back and do it again. So when you say just basing it on all humanity, I'm going to make an assumption and you don't agree with, is it capital punishment, executions?
Oh, yeah. Capital punishment.
Oh,
Yes.
so
And
tell me more about the terms, how you feel about the criminals, and then your work is holistic and reformative. How is
yeah,
it different than what we see? We being like me, sitting and not really being close to the justice system at all beyond the work that I do with WPSA.
absolutely. And before I say anything, I have to say that the priority is always, always getting victims and survivors away from the cycle of abuse safely. That is top priority. And I know that that's really what's most important. But I will say, for example, in the courts, especially in the domestic violence courts, right? They do prioritize the survivor, but they also give those accused of abuse or those who were, there's pretty strong evidence that they did abuse, they give those individuals the option to enter rehabilitation programs that will allow them to safely explore what it is that, drove them to act the way that they did, things of that nature. Now, again, this really goes back to the holistic justice piece. I do believe that we're all human beings in the end, and that those who abuse have been abused themselves. And they need a lot of hands-on help. And I don't believe the answer is to isolate them. I don't believe the answer is to see them as less than human. I think we have this tendency as humans to sort of dehumanize those who've done some horrific things, right? But the truth is that they are human. These individuals who did these things, they weren't overtaken necessarily maybe by some great evil. They were acting out of their broken humanity. And that deserves attention. That deserves care. And we don't reform by breaking a person further, right?
No. And that's
No.
where I feel like we've gotten to in the mainstream, in the day to day, everyone feels like someone has to be wrong.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
and before my soul awakening, I was that. Everything was happening to me. What everyone was out to get me, and that's how I was raised. I picked up that training from the domestic violence home I grew up in,
Yeah.
and even before that, the entire lineage of my world has been domestic violence. So someone has to be wrong. And
Right.
so I'm the cycle breaker. I'm the one that said, nope,
Amazing.
not this time. I love it. It's amazing and it's difficult to manage relationships that have been in that sphere and may not have awakened like I did. So I love what you're saying so much because I think what people hear when you and I say things like everyone's human and deserves humanity, what a lot of people hear is like, oh, they do awful things and they get a pass. That's
Nope.
not at all what we're saying. But I think that's what some people choose to hear.
I
But
think
I
so.
think duality, again, more than one thing can be true at once. They did horrific, horrific things and they hurt people and they're
Yeah.
also human. So
Yeah.
can we help them rather than hurt them more?
Yeah.
Is it
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
not vibing with an eye for an eye?
Oh yeah. No, that's archaic. That's antiquated. I there's an Old Testament, there's a New Testament. I mean, to put it in that frame of reference
Yeah.
or framework. But you talk about sort of workplace psychological abuse. I myself have struggled through and suffered through workplace psychological abuse. And it was one of the toughest times of my life. And there was one individual in particular that I had the hardest time with, just to put it quite bluntly. She was not very nice to me. I guess that's pretty euphemistic, but I really, really just hated her for a long time. I had a really difficult time finding peace around her and what happened and, forgiving her for, what happened. And it really took me working to find the human in her to heal on my end, just understanding that what she did was inexcusable and that there should be accountability. Absolutely. Her humanity doesn't excuse her behavior and the consequences of that behavior, right? That said, I really had to sort of see where, in many ways, I discovered that she was like me in a lot of ways, and that, different circumstances had created an even more hostile environment, I think, for everyone involved. I'm talking very abstractly here, but really, I realized that she was struggling through her own thing, that she had her own vulnerabilities and insecurities. And in recognizing that in her and sort of empathizing to some extent, just having that sort of empathy allowed me to kind of move past some of that pain, I want to say, and trauma.
You're so right. And thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. Workplace abuse is the norm today because we are still beholden and are jam-packed with the people that only know how to be in a workplace, which involves power and control over someone else.
Sure.
And with my most recent abuser, that was the one last straw moment, I actually knew exactly where they were coming from.
Yeah.
They spent their entire lives as a first generation immigrant into this country and was always treated as such. And I saw it. People telling them in meetings, why don't you learn some English? We can understand you. So I saw the abuse toward them. And then because I was able to get more on optics, I would get more achieved. And they thought it was because we didn't look alike. And so they were really angry with me.
Sure.
That I could get things moved. And so that began the abuse, telling me I wasn't good enough every day. And so, to your point, full circle, it's so hard to give grace to your abuser. Believe Jennifer and I, we get it. And you will never be responsible for their work or their recognition of it or their anything. It's really what finding within you, the spots within you where that abuse resonated and landed. And then trusting at some point, I don't know, do you think it's like trusting that there'll be justice at some point? Because it's not fair what happens to you too. But for me, like when the act is passed, I would love to see something like, and this is hard for me as an energetic coach and spiritual guide because free will and autonomy, but like I would love to say to the abuser, hey, to keep your job, you got to go to therapy. I don't know. Is that
Yeah.
the answer? I don't know.
I will say in my case, I discovered that this individual was asked to resign from their position. So in that way, maybe there was a little bit of like, well, I guess, I think I was right about, my assessment of the situation and just how bad it was. That said, I think it really took me finding a healthy workplace at some point. And even when I was at the healthy workplace, right, it took me like months and months. I would say I'm still in the recovery process. I have this weird thought that always goes through my head where I'm like, well, is this going to be the day, right? Is this going to be the week? Is something horrible going to start happening? It's like this constant paranoia and feeling really off center, I think, internally. Still healing, but I think around the 8-month mark into my new job, I really started to stop being scared so much. I was surrounded by people who I felt I could really jive with, people who were really authentic, friendly. I consider these people my family, even though we don't say that we are a family. Just to make that clear, we're not really like that.
Now it's like now that's like a red flag on
I know. I know. I was
don't go anywhere where it's a family.
No, and that's the thing. I've always been kind of hesitant to use that word, but they really do feel like my professional family. And these are people that I hang out with outside of work too. And so I've really fallen in love with the people that I work with, and that has played a huge part in my recovery. But in terms of expecting anything during the healing process, I have to say, I don't know. I had to really let go of expectations because I was really eating me alive. I was just kind of like, I want this to happen. I need this to happen. If this doesn't happen, what does that say about our systems and institutions and society? But I think you can have one expectation, and it's to continue to heal. And that's really the only thing I can say.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest parts, as you can imagine, every single day. And I had marketing for Workplace Psychological Safety Act, so our channels are flooded with people that are angry.
Yeah.
Absolute. I get it. I get it. And I think the hardest part is that sometimes you might get justice, sometimes you might not. You talk about healing. I think a part of it, to your point, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, part of it will always stick with us.
It's true.
Any abuse, to your point, any abuse might stay for a long time, and there's no time frame where it's like suddenly done or gone. And I have to tell you, some people that get the quote unquote justice, there's still a long road to healing. It's depends on every individual. So thank you for sharing more about yours. That's extremely beautiful and rare that someone feels so safe at work. And all I can say is we're working on it, and we hear you, and we're all working for a day where we can have full dignity and respect for each other and earn a living.
And I just want to put out there that I had to take time off too. I actually ended up getting extremely sick. So I had to take medical leave and just medical leave means that I was going to come back. No, I quit my job. I had to. I chose myself for the first time in my life, actually. First time in my life where I was like, you know what? I've been in abusive situations, bullying situations. I've been in a lot of terrible situations. This is my moment. This is my one chance to choose myself and to do something that is right for me and stop letting myself be put down and oppressed and, all that. So it was the hardest thing ever, but I quit my job and I took about a couple years to recover from all of it. It was really, really difficult, I have to say. The initial years or, times out of, trauma, I mean, a traumatic experience, man, some of the hardest, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because you hurt, and then also you have the very real 3D human responsibilities of paying bills. And so I feel like the anger builds so quickly because it's like, how dare someone treat me this way? And then I further take the hit. Like
Yeah.
the fairness of it is something that a lot of folks, including myself, my latest experience, it'll be 2 years at the end of October. And there are still moments where there's a trigger moment. Like, for instance, one of the executives who knew fully well of my abuse
Yeah.
was let go, and now they're suing
Oh,
for the same abuse that I received, and they turned a cheek. So, like, I feel two things. I feel a lot of things, but two things, big things. One, I'm so damn proud of her
mm,
for standing up and being able to. The ability to be able to fight with resources and otherwise is one thing. So I'm proud. And the other, I'm so mad at her. So both can be true at once. It all gets to be valid and true for you, and just having so much compassion and grace inward, so much love and trust for you, particularly, is the how I feel. So,
yeah. And, I have to say, I really appreciate that we're able to stay in the gray, right? Because so much of life is gray. And I feel like, everything is kind of like within that tension, that sort of ill-defined tension, right? Truthfully, nothing is really certain, like you said earlier during our conversation. And I appreciate you bringing the duality of things, into this conversation. You can be both things, right? That's really important for
yeah.
humans to understand, I think.
Right, because you want to force yourself into one thing, and then you're like, but wait, I feel this too. Feel it all. Feel your feels. Yeah, turn it up. Max out the volume. Let's see what comes in. So, Jennifer, thank you for sharing your beautiful story, hard story. And I personally want to say I'm so proud of you for choosing yourself, choosing you.
You. It took a lot. It did.
Yeah. I wish for a day where it doesn't have to take something drastic for us to choose ourselves. And and it depends on how far you're willing to do your own work or healing or growth. And again, some folks won't do it in this lifetime. Wasn't meant to be. They'll come back and do it again. So, what moves are you excited to be making right now?
I am so excited about a couple things. So I work in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think it's a relatively new field, and there's a lot of controversy around it. And, I think there was a question you had in there about like, what would you tell your supporters and your haters, right? So I'll save what I have to say about that for later. But in terms of moves that I'm really excited to be making, I am trying to put the spotlight on all of our non-attorney legal professionals because they tend to get excluded from a lot of things. And I have to say, it really is the right time. I think non-attorney legal professionals are hungrier than ever to be understood for their value, recognized, celebrated. And I think attorneys are increasingly seeing the value of non-attorney staff. And so I run all of our employee resource groups at the Office of the Illinois Attorney General. And we do have a paralegals group, and I made a post about it on LinkedIn, actually. They are fantastic. So many of them show up for every meeting. Man, these are some of the most passionate, intelligent, ambitious people that I know. And there's such a thirst to grow, to learn. I really feel so inspired by them, and I'm excited to continue to put together and execute programming around celebrating those who aren't strictly attorney in our field.
That's so cool. ERGs are a special place in my heart. I led the women's ERG at Discover and led 1,500 women.
Oh,
That's how I realized my forte into coaching. It's like, oh, that lights me up when
yes.
there's some sort of a next best action
Yeah.
created in someone's authentic energy. It's really gorgeous. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. And I love what you said about DEI. And the biggest thing that I saw specifically in the big company I worked for is that DEI was built like on top of those deeply rooted systems that were designed and thrive on power and control over someone. And that's where specifically I feel like in some of those bigger organizations, it was a box check and you had people at highest ranks, even some of the C-suite, they're like, yeah, this DEI crap, just say you did it. So it was never going to take a foothold the way that they were really intending it to be. And so that's probably to your point about like, I don't know if that's how you feel about the controversy around it but that's how I feel about DEI, which is kind of slapped on top of patriarchy, white supremacy, colonialism, capitalism, rather than like almost going from the bottom up, meaning like dismantling and uprooting all of those systems, which is actually what is needed to have something like DEI really excel. In my thoughts.
The way that I see DEI is DEI should become obsolete at some point, right?
Yeah.
That's the hope here. And I do believe that it will become obsolete at some point. Now, in the world that we live in and the context that we currently live in, it's necessary to navigate skillfully and well, right? And thoughtfully, because the reality is what it is. And you can't really alienate so many people when you're trying to get everybody to be on the same team. And thankfully, I do have mentors in the DEI space. I want to give them, different shout outs. The governor's office, they do fantastic work in helping to guide and mentor us, state agency DEI leads. And, something that I really appreciate is they offer a space in which I can say what I really feel and think and, get help for these very real needs. But they also help me kind of navigate reality, navigate the circumstances that are in place at this moment in time in our history. And I think it's necessary to do things in phases if you're working within the system, within the structure. And thank God for people who exited and do incredibly innovative things like yourself, because you push the needle. It's people like you who push the needle toward full reform, right? And then you have people like me on the inside, trying to artfully and skillfully navigate things and, help everyone understand that we're all on the same team. We all want similar things. And these are the barriers that need to be overcome, right? In order for us to get there.
You made a post on LinkedIn, and this has been a little bit ago, but you were accepted into the Forefront Illinois Racial Equity cohort. Amazing. What does that work look like? And like, what y'all doing?
Yeah, so I think there are about 23 of us. We're all from different nonprofits and government agencies in Illinois. So not everyone is from Chicago. There are folks who are serving, for example, Southern Illinois. But we get together and we learn more about racial equity. We define it. We try to pitch ideas. We learn. And most importantly, we discuss with one another and try to refine existing ideas and try to build off of each other's ideas. The hope is to create a more equitable Illinois. And I love that because I love Chicago. I think, Chicago's my home. I'm going to make it my home for the next however many years. But we forget, I think, that, we're in the state of Illinois, and Illinois as a whole, resources aren't being distributed evenly throughout. That's including informational resources. So I love that we're all working together throughout the state to accomplish a common vision or mission. I'm really excited about sort of where this cohort and program will take us. I think we're nearing the end of it, but I'm excited about all the discussions that are and lessons that await us.
Does that cohort include people that want to like cut off Chicago from Illinois?
No, nobody like
You know,
that. Uh,
have you heard that though? Like people.
no.
Okay, so I'm from downstate Illinois,
Okay.
and they wish that Chicago would just like break off on its own and not
Really?
be part of Illinois because it's the anchor of Illinois in terms of political, social view. Like it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
resources, like you mentioned. So that's how downstate, a lot of downstate feels.
Yeah, yeah. This was the first time I'm hearing about it, which is surprising.
And I
And
live up here too, so I'm a forever Chicagoan. Yeah.
yeah, forever Chicago. And yeah, it's a great city. I have to think about that a little bit because I think I get where they're coming from, but please don't make us separate from you guys. I promise we're all Illinoisans.
Well, maybe in that's where we'll beautifully go into the last question. Through this hour, we've learned DEI, holistic reformative justice, being in Chicago. It's like, all right, those who support and have capacity and space to realize that everyone is human,
Yeah. Yeah.
sharing more about how they can perhaps amplify that in their own individual life to help others realize that it can be both human and it's not justification. What would you say to everybody?
First, I do want to address, those who are non-Chicagoan Illinoisans or non-Chicago Illinoisans. I really feel like you guys deserve to be mentioned as more than the other parts of Illinois, right?
Oh,
Springfield, Urbana, Metro East. There are so many other wonderful cities in Illinois. And I'm just sorry that people who are not from Chicago, areas that are not, Chicago, get left out of the conversation. My hope is that we increasingly include folks into conversations about Illinois and what's good for Illinois, and that we're able to foster discussion and dialogue. I think that's really important. Please don't write Chicagoans off. Trust me, there are people who care, especially in the public service arena, right? Like myself, who care about making Illinois just really great through the efforts of everyone involved. And that said, in terms of like my supporters and, my haters, when it comes to DEI, I actually have an interesting story about that. I was at a bar in the Ukrainian village, and there was a guy there who asked me and my friends, what we did for a living and, all that stuff. And as soon as I said DEI, he got belligerent. And he was very, very upset and said that it was people like me ruining America. So he had a lot of choice words and, things to say about everything that's, wrong about DEI and why it, it doesn't work and why we should get rid of it and all this stuff. And, in that moment, I don't know what it was. Normally I would kind of walk away and, I would just kind of be like, nope, I'm not having this conversation. But I decided to kind of listen to him because I wanted to understand where it was all coming from, right? So I got really close to his face and I just decided to look him in the eyes and hear him out. And what's really interesting is that he could not look at me in the eyes the whole time. That was really interesting to me. He kept looking at my friend who was a guy, much like himself. And he refused to sort of look at me, right? So that aside, that's, really neither here nor there. But in that moment, I realized something really important. So I asked him, where are you getting your information? And he was embarrassed to say, I think, because he had a really hard time telling me. And I asked him, is this social media? Long story short, he does eventually come to sort of say that it is, in fact, social media for the most part. I get why he doesn't want to admit that. But I think there are a lot of misconceptions about DEI circulating, in our society, in our world. There's this idea that, someone in DEI or a DEI practitioner like myself would favor certain groups at the disadvantage of others, that it's a zero-sum game. And I'm going to be so real with you right now. It's not. I take care of everyone. I make sure that everyone is heard. It's part of my job. Part of my job is to build bridges. It's to build connections. It's to build relationship. And it's to help those who want and need resources get them. That is, at the end of the day, priority for me. Now, does a lot of my work place emphasis on historically disadvantaged groups and marginalized groups? Yes, that's just one part of my job, right? There are so many other things that I do to the benefit of all. And I wish people would understand racial equity, gender equity. A more equitable world benefits non-diverse persons too. Everyone.
I know energetically what's happening and why these folks are coming to us right now. Over the weekend, I got so many messages because I will post amplifying how we need to be able to show up for women who are being dismissed or ignored in meetings. And I'll post something like that or repost something. And inevitably, I get men who come in and say, what about the men? I'm so exhausted from having to explain that. By me amplifying women,
Right.
again, duality. Why does it have to be one or the other? When I was leading the women's ERG, it was like, where's our men's ERG? Honestly, I wanted to say, y'all, history has been your ERG. So give us a minute, because in the ideal world, we wouldn't need ERGs either. It's
No.
all about the playing field. The ground is not even near being solid for all of us. It's been for
No.
one type of person. And we're not trying to call you out. It's about it's like bringing them all with us and like creating that equal ground. And so I get a little activated. I'm feeling my blood rising right now.
Why does it have to be a zero-sum game? Can I help you, but also help women so that we can all come together and share that space in equal measure, right?
And can I recognize your pain and journey and healing?
Yes,
And can you still understand that you still have more privilege in the room than many others? Like,
absolutely.
again, more than one thing can be true. So that's what I'm asking them to realize. It's not downplaying your trauma or your journey. It's recognizing that you still have more privilege than many other folks.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you could say or do something in a room where someone is being oppressed. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I,
Approaching things from an empathetic point of view, right? Empathy is everything. It's the name of the game, in my opinion.
oh, Jennifer, where can we find you and more about your work and how you're moving the needle? Where can we see your fun stuff?
Sure. LinkedIn is really the best way, but I'm really excited about the work that I am doing. I do feel as though, we're onto something here, and hopefully at some point, Amy, my work becomes obsolete.
Amazing. Closing remarks as we wrap up.
There are a couple things that come to mind. There's this quote by Jhumpa Lahiri. She's a really prolific author, Asian American author. And in one of her books, there's this one quote that really resonates with me and the work that I do, I think, or how I see my work. But the quote is, "Remember that you and I made this journey, that we went together to a place where there was nowhere left to go." And my hope as a DEI practitioner is that I am journeying with folks to a place where there is nowhere left to go, right? They don't have to journey further. They have arrived, right? In that place of safety, thriving, happiness, joy. I mean, that's how I see my work. I am here with you, going to that place where there was nowhere left to go. And I think about that quote every week, just to keep my spirits up, when things get a little hard. But that would really be the thing that I would say to leave everyone with. DEI is most effective when you are able to utilize tools like empathy, compassion. I mean, it's very much defined by those things. And I may be a warrior, but I may not be the kind of warrior you think I am. I am seeking to be a healer. I am seeking to be a restorer. I am seeking to be a Sam Gamgee on your Frodo journey.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.